Good afternoon. What's up? Welcome to Cohn and Krueger. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. It's the bye week. It's time to take stock, take a breath, and maybe say goodbye to Adam Peters. We're going to talk about him in a minute. He could be getting a promotion. He could be on the way out of town, because anytime you get an opportunity to join the Washington Commanders, that's an opportunity you can't pass up. Larry, how you doing?
What's going on, Grant? How you doing, man?
Hanging in there, man. I'm hanging in there. Let's talk Jake Moody. This game was supposed to mean nothing. It was basically supposed to come and go, and then you never think about it again. But Jake Moody missed two kicks, short ones, 38-yarder and an extra point, both wide right. Really an unfortunate thing to happen right before the playoffs. And it reminds us all that this was going on in the preseason as well, that he does have a very strong leg, but he may have some psychological issues. What do you think the issue is with Jake? Is it psychological? Is it physical? Is it an issue at all?
You know, I don't think it's psychological, just because I talked to him a couple times, and I think he's a pretty solid kid. But I don't really care what his issue is. All I care is that he's got an issue and he's not making kicks. I mean, Shanahan said it, and he was asked about the kicks yesterday, and he's like, yeah, he's got to make them.
Not great.
And it's like, we can analyze it, and I'm not smart enough to say, well, he just didn't strike it on the right side of the ball or this or that. They're 27th in the NFL in field goal attempts. So they've gotten to this point, not because Jake's made a bunch. They've gotten to this point by winning just, are kind of around him. And he, yesterday left 4 points on the table. They would have won by a field goal. Instead, they lost by one. And if that were the end of the season, there would be 10 times as many people with pitchforks in the chat right now going, what the hell, what the hell, what the hell? And there's two kinds of takes today. It's like the people that hope for the best and people that are a little bit more, concerned. I would put myself in the more concerned category. And I understand they don't want to insult him. They don't want to hurt his confidence. They want to go with him long term. Shanahan was asked about, do you want to make a switch? No. Jake's kicked well. But in reality, all I would say to anybody who's like, no, he's going to be fine, is give me the pressure kick that he made this year. We're 18 games in, or 17 games in 18 weeks.
I can think of a pressure kick he missed.
Yeah, I can too. And so that's a concern, especially when we all know that there's not going to be any acceptable reason why the 49ers don't reach the Super Bowl. And there's only going to be a couple acceptable reasons why they don't win it. So to me, this is a major concern.
It was funny. The idea of replacing Robbie Gould with a rookie always seemed a little ambitious. It's like, hey, you were telling us for years that Trey Lance couldn't play because this is a win now team. And now you're saying that you're going to win the Super Bowl with a rookie kicker. Okay, it could happen. The Niners did it in 94. But that team didn't need him to make pressure kicks in the Super Bowl. That team was the 94 Niners. I don't know. I think it was interesting that in justifying the pick that night, what did they say? We put him through a test that had so much pressure. There's no way you could simulate the pressure of a playoff run in a workout, but they thought they did. And now they're like, man, we thought we vetted this guy. Like, well, he's a kid.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not saying that they did anything wrong in their process, because I don't know their process. I heard they made the ball wet. They ran him out there at the last second. All the things that you would think that you would do to create, hurdles and difficulty for the kicker. All I'm saying is they won despite him, not because of him this year. Yes, Doug Bryan was the rookie kicker on their last Super Bowl champion, but that team was so loaded, and they didn't wind up needing him that year. I remember that year pretty well. If you have no alternatives, it'd be one thing. But, I mean, you got a guy who was just with you, who knows your culture, who has retired, but he was 39 of 39 on PATs, and he was 29 of 29 on field goals in the playoffs. And it's like, the guy's never missed in the playoffs, and now you get a rookie, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, you know what? All the people that are against us or against me or against the idea of, man, maybe you got a real problem here, are going to be standing shoulder to shoulder with me if the guy misses, like, I don't know, like 2 kicks next week or in the playoff game in the divisional round. So I don't know. I'm not saying you got to get rid of Jake and you got to go to Robbie Gould, but man, you gotta at least, find out where Robbie's at. You got to find out if he's practicing. You got to find out. You got to do your due diligence. You got a phone call has to be made. You got to send a guy out there. You got to take a look. You got to figure it out, because I mean, you cannot have this whole season derailed because the rookie kicker, wets down his leg. And here's the thing, Grant. This is the West Coast on a day in California with no weather, and no playoffs, in a game that did not matter. He missed a PAT and a field goal in week 18. He knew this was the final tune-up. Every other game is you win, you move on, you lose, you go home. Season over. No backup, no net, no safety, anything. So, yeah, call me knee-jerk, say I'm getting over-exercised about it. I can say whatever you want, and there are plenty of people that I'm sure feel that way watching this. But all I'm saying is, it's a concern, and everybody, whether you support Robbie or support Jake or support any other kicker, when Jake goes to line up for that first kick in the divisional round, you are going to be holding your breath.
Well, look, I don't know what Robbie's up to, although I just checked his Twitter, and 5 days ago he said he took his first ever ski lesson. So maybe he's, he was on the bunny slopes,
right?
But I just tweeted at him right now, do you want to kick field goals for the 49ers in the playoffs? So we'll see. He's learning how to ski, but he's probably better at kicking footballs. So maybe he'll come back. It seems kind of personal between him and the 49ers. And I don't know if anyone can, relate to being replaced by a younger, cheaper person who's not as experienced. And you probably don't come in at the 11th hour and clean up his mess. What happens when he makes the mess is you're on a ski slope and you see it on your phone and you laugh privately. I would imagine that Robbie Gould probably got a kick out of what happened. Nothing against Jake. Good kid.
They know each other. He likes Jake. I mean,
yeah.
Jake,
Okay. I'll take it back then.
Yeah, they have a friendship or whatever. So I guarantee you he's not laughing, but I guarantee you he's aware of the situation.
It's like, oh, you want me to come back? My price tag just went up. Sorry. Oh, did I say 5 million? It was 6. I didn't write it correctly. I left a little. Okay. Adam Peters is in demand. He's been interviewing for these general manager positions the last couple of years, hasn't gotten the job. This year, the Washington Commanders and the Las Vegas Raiders, two of the most prestigious franchises in the NFL, well run, want him or want to interview him for their vacant general manager spot. What do you make of this? Do you think he'll leave?
I mean, he was in Denver, had a good job, came to the 49ers, I thought because he wanted to, maybe he grew up a Niner fan and wanted to, to be with the 49ers and maybe wanted to be closer to home. Is that no longer the case? I mean, I'll say this. I think John Lynch, especially if the Niners win the Super Bowl, John Lynch, I don't think is a long-time guy. I think John Lynch has got other options and other things that he wants to do. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I haven't talked to John about it, but either way, if I'm Jed, and I'm John, and I guess the first question is this, Grant: how important is Adam Peters to the Niners and to the Niners' success? Is he vitally important? Is he kind of important? Is he the star in the room? I mean, we don't really know. The drafts are this is my guy. That's your guy. That's Adam's guy. I heard he pounded the table for Ambry Thomas. I don't know if that's the case. Ambry's had an up and down career, but he looks pretty good right now. So I don't know. I'm pretty impressed with the 49ers as far as what they've done to build their roster. But how much of that's Lynch? How much of that's Peters? I don't know. But if they decide that Peters is indeed a very valuable guy, there is no salary cap on executive salaries. I would do everything in my power if I was Jed to retain this guy. Change his title, promise him the job when Lynch is done, maybe promote him to the general manager and change titles around, up his salary. There is no cap on what you pay your executives. Give him more power, promise him the future. I don't know. It could be anything, Grant. It could be anything from, Peters is just a guy and there's some other guy that's the star of their personnel renaissance, or it could be, Lynch is truly the star and Peters is just along for the ride. I really don't know, but I get the sense that Peters is a major part of what they do and a major star in the room. And if he is, I would do everything in my power to retain him.
If they lose Peters, John Lynch is good at a lot of things, but he doesn't have a personnel background at all. He has a media background and a playing background. Kyle Shanahan's great at what he does, but when he gets involved in personnel in years that he's not coaching the Senior Bowl, he has kind of a spotty track record too. So we don't know exactly what Adam Peters is responsible for, but he's the guy with the personnel background of those three. He's the guy who's been in the league a long time and who's I would be very interesting to see what would happen without Adam Peters. I don't think the Niners want to find out. And it's real easy for them to promote him to general manager. They already promoted John Lynch to president of football operations. The door is wide open. Unless you think he brings nothing to your team, promote him. Give him maybe this is just a negotiation, right? Like the Niners could promote him and they could give him a salary bonus. But do they have to? Well, yeah, now they do. If Peters forces their hand by, getting offers elsewhere, sort of sets the price. Maybe that's all that. I doubt he leaves. Why would you want to go to the Raiders?
Why? Well, to me, the one that's not, forget the Raiders. The Raiders, I think, the Raiders are a tire fire as long as Mark Davis is running that thing. Right. But it's the Commanders with Bob Myers, and they both went to UCLA, that makes me think that there could be something there. Think about the Commanders for a second. They are an iconic franchise that, years ago were kind of like the Niners on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Jack Kent Cook, Charlie Casserly, Bobby Beathard, Joe Gibbs. They were the Niners. They were a team that spent big money, contended for top free agents, contended for Super Bowls. And then Dan Schneider bought them and just ruined the entire brand. Now they're badly in search of somebody. They want a new stadium. They want to jumpstart their iconic brand. Well, they first got to jumpstart their football team. So they hire a guy like Bob Myers, who may, I don't know what his arrangement is there, but maybe he gets a piece of the pie. I don't know. I would imagine that could be part of it. He went to UCLA, spent an awful lot of time with at Niner games in the last couple of years. It seems like Bob Myers has been at more than just a Niner game. He's been at quite a few. And maybe he's had a number of talks with Peters. And if Myers can somehow, think about it. If your goal is to make billions, the NFL is where you'd be, because the NFL pie is growing by billions. The Commanders would be a perfect franchise because they're dormant and have no stadium. And how do you get that stadium? Well, you got to solve your problem on the football side. You bring in Peters. He solves your drafting. He brings in a good head coach. He revives the brand. You then build a stadium. Now you've got a franchise that's worth quite a bit more. I think that's the kind of big fish that Myers could be after. And it wouldn't shock me at all if Myers' number one target is Adam Peters.
Can you explain the connection between them beyond the fact that they both went to UCLA? Like, I went to UCLA, but I don't know Bob Myers like that.
Well, I don't know that, Grant, I don't know that there's any connection other than Bob Myers has been spotted at an awful lot of Niner games.
Yeah,
I don't even know. They may not even know each other.
In the same area. They probably have met each other.
They've probably met each other. I've seen Adam. Hasn't Peters been at a Warrior game courtside during the last 5 or 6 years? Probably has. At some point, he probably met Joe and Bob. And then think about it from Bob's perspective. If you want Bob Myers is not going to, people that make, no money want to make six figures. People who make six figures want to make $1 million. People who make $1 million want to make, be a several $1 million, and a year guy. If you've got several millions of dollars like Bob Myers, you want to be a billionaire. Well, how do you become a billionaire? Well, you probably, attach yourself to some minor ownership of an NFL franchise. I don't know what Bob Myers' arrangement is with the Commanders, but he's the kind of guy they need a PR friendly face. They need a new football czar. He could be the PR friendly face. Peters could be the football czar. Peters could then go get the next Kyle Shanahan, D'Amico Ryans head coach. They could revive their entire brand. They could have more success on the field. It could lead to dumping FedEx Field for a new stadium. And suddenly the franchise is just worth quite a bit more. And everybody wins. So, except, of course, the Niners if they lose Peters. So, I don't know that there's a connection, but I could definitely envision one.
All right, let's look at the betting lines for this weekend's games that the Niners are not involved in, but they will be watching because they're going to have to play one of these teams. So let's start off with the AFC just for fun. Cleveland -3 on the road against Houston. Who you like in that one?
I like Cleveland. I mean, if you look at the history of the NFL, rookie quarterbacks going up against the number one defense in the league in the playoffs, I think it's happened like 3 or 4 times. The rookie quarterback team always loses. Cleveland right now has got Flacco playing well. They've got the number one dominant players on all 3 levels. They're going to go on the road in Houston and beat the Texans in my mind.
Okay. All right. I agree with that. Miami Dolphins +3.5 on the road against the Chiefs.
This one could go in any direction because I don't know if the Chiefs are in really a bad way. Kansas City leads the NFL. They've dropped 38 passes this year, 25 from the wide receivers alone. Mahomes is 9-2 at home in the playoffs. Miami hasn't won a playoff game since 2000. They lost Jalen Phillips. They lost Bradley Chubb. They just lost last night to the Bills and kind of gagged it away. I don't know who to pick because I could see either side winning, but I'll take Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm going to take Kansas City as well. I don't really believe in the Dolphins. I don't believe in Tua in particular. Team's a little soft, and he's a little soft.
And also the Hard Knocks thing in season. I mean, I think that's a really bad decision for an organization. I mean, we've never really sat down with Lynch and Shanahan and talked about why they are so adamant about not having Hard Knocks cameras in their midst. But that's in training camp. McDaniel and the Dolphins allowed this to happen in season. And while the shows have been great, I got to think that that's a little bit of a distraction. And then you mix in the injuries on their defensive side. And, I mean, it's going to take a tremendous day by Tyreek Hill to beat the Chiefs on the road.
It is worth pointing out that the Dolphins beat the Chiefs Week 9 in Kansas City 21-14. That was 2 months ago. Still, they played, Dolphins won. So like you said, this one could go either way. How about Pittsburgh +9.5 on the road against the Bills?
The 9.5 is tough, but I'll take Buffalo. You know, I'm not going to worry about the point spread in this one just because it seems like in the playoffs, you know, the margins sometimes get out of whack because there's emotion involved. Bottom line is Buffalo was 500 and have now won 5 in a row. And to me, Buffalo's the team I fear the most coming out of the AFC for the 49ers because let's just say Niners and Bills meet in Vegas. You got Josh Allen, who's only 4-4 in 8 playoff games, but you got Josh Allen, who at that point would have won 8 in a row to get to Super Bowl Sunday. So I don't know if the Bills are going to make it all the way to Vegas, but they're sure as heck going to beat the Steelers, especially without TJ Watt.
Okay. Packers +7.5 on the road against the Cowboys. 7.5?
This is another tough one because Jordan Love, you know, finished the year on a 15-1 touchdown to interception ratio burn. I mean, he's playing well. And Dallas is a fraud. I really believe Dallas is going to fall on their face in the playoffs. But Mike McCarthy, you know, Jerry Jones has put the pressure on Mike McCarthy and basically not guaranteed that he's even coming back. Cowboys are going to probably have to play this game without Stephon Gilmore. And you can run on Dallas, but I don't think Green Bay's the team. I'll take Dallas minus the 7.5.
I'm taking Green Bay. I think Green Bay's good. We'll see. Maybe they're a year away, but I just don't believe in the Cowboys. I can't wait for them to collapse. Rams +3 on the road against the Lions.
Well, I mean, the Rams are real. I mean, look, the Ram team didn't even show up yesterday, and they beat the Niners. I mean, there was no Stafford, no Donald, no Cup, no Kyron, no Ernest Jones. And the Rams can score 30 points, and Laporta's hurt, and Brian Branch is hurt. CJ Gardner-Johnson is back. But, man, the emotion in that game is going to be off the charts. It's going to be a night game. I think it's going to be like an 8 o'clock start. Lions at home in the playoffs. I think the crowd is going to pull the Lions through that game. I don't like the Lions to get that much further than this, but somehow, some way, I think the Lions win that game. Goff gets his revenge.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with it. How about Eagles -3 on the road against the Buccaneers?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles are
What?
The Eagles are in a bad way. I mean, they were 10-1. They finished 1-5. They just got boat raced by the New York Giants. There's no A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts has got, mangled fingers. Philly last year, Grant, had 70 sacks. This year, they have 43. I'm taking Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'm taking Tampa Bay too. The Eagles can't beat anyone right now. All they do is beat themselves. Those are the odds. Those are the lines. If you want to bet, use the link in the description. Receive 125% bonus from BetUS and get your winnings within 24 hours. All right, let's take a look at from the Niners perspective.
That means Tampa Bay, by the way, is coming to the Niners.
Yeah, from the Niners perspective, who's the team they want to face in the round one if they're rooting, which they are?
I think they probably want Tampa Bay. That would that would be my guess.
Not Philly?
They don't. Well,
Philly is terrible.
Yeah, but Philly still has 3 offensive linemen that are headed to Kansas.
Dudes.
Yeah, and they're desperate. And here's the other thing: Sirianni. This is odd to say this. He could be coaching for his job. I mean, he's circling the drain. He's dropping F-bombs and swearing in press conferences. And I mean, I don't know if you contrasted Shanahan's post-game conversation yesterday and the intensity with what Sirianni said post-game and after the Eagle loss. I mean, it was like night and day. Kyle looked like he was like hanging out at the beach, and Sirianni looked like he was like, trying to find the right phrasing and avoid stepping in crap and avoid insulting his team, but try to motivate his team. I think the Niners would rather take on Tampa. I think they've got a pretty good idea about this Tampa team. I'm not saying this would be an easy game to win, but
they've already played Tampa. They've beaten Tampa. Tampa would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, they played Philly and beat Philly. They played Tampa and beat Tampa.
Yeah, those two are obvious. I mean, I think they clearly don't want to face the Packers or the Rams. That's not – I mean, they could beat those teams.
Yeah, they don't want
some good quarterbacks.
I don't think anybody wants the Rams really because the Rams can score 30 and Stafford's got a ring and Kyron's legit. Puka and Cup and these guys are really hard to cover. Tutu's an absolute burner. So the Rams have a really difficult challenge. They're a huge challenge for any defense, but I would say Tampa is the team they'll likely get and want to get. Green Bay, I don't know what to make of Green Bay as a contender, to be completely honest. But I would say for the Niners, Tampa would be a very comfortable first round. Rams would be less comfortable, and Green Bay, LaFleur wins a lot of games, and the quarterback's hot, and Green Bay's got a much better defensive line than people think. So I don't know. I would say Tampa's the team.
Okay. Zach Rivera says Sam robbed Moody's chance to redeem himself. Kyle is being arrogant, not bringing in a kicker as a backup. Not the year to experiment with the kicker. Two kickers in the team?
I did want to see, I don't know if you were thinking about it as well, but I was thinking, I don't care how this game ends, of course, but I was hoping Sam would make a couple more first downs so we could see if there was some durability to the down, to the free fall of Jake Moody, because let's be honest, you miss a PAT and a 38-yarder, you lose 4 points on the field. I think everybody wanted to see him get redemption and see if he had the resilience to bounce back, and we didn't get that opportunity. So now we're all just kind of left with the question mark of, well, where's he at?
Yeah. Now he has to think about this for the next 2 weeks. James Welsh says Moody's going to miss in the Super Bowl, cost us the game, and go Ace Ventura, Ron Finkel on the world. Hide your Dolphins, or in this case, your 49ers. Yikes. It was Ray Finkel, not Ron Finkel, okay? And he became Lisa Einhorn.
Get your Finkles right.
Stunna 2 times says everybody keeps saying this game didn't matter, trying to cover for SD and Moody, but he still fumbled and Moody still missed kicks, LOL. Darnold doesn't really matter, but Moody really does. I don't really want to talk about Darnold anymore. We did that. Cleveland Farrell,
Darnold was Darnold in this game. I mean, he was prototypical Darnold. He excites you. Completed 74% in the first half. Looked like a stud. Second half can't complete a pass. Winds up completing, right about his career average.
Fumbled twice,
and then then has a key fumble and winds up on the losing end. I mean that was Sam Darnold.
Compare him to Carson Wentz, who started off terribly, but found a way to win and got better as the game went on, which is why Carson Wentz, although he's also a backup quarterback, is better than Sam Darnold. Always has been. Still is.
I agree. I like Carson Wentz, and maybe I'm partial because I've seen him beat the Niners 4 times. Yep. But Carson Wentz, even Shanahan, do you remember talking to Shanahan?
I like Carson Wentz
said?
Too.
Shanahan was very complimentary going into that Colts, the atmospheric river night game that he quarterbacked against the Niners. He was very complimentary of Carson Wentz, and it didn't feel like he was just kissing butt to tell us how great he was. It felt like he legitimately liked the guy. I think he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in football.
Okay, I got a bonus topic. Why the Niners should sign Carson Wentz. Look, might sound crazy. It might sound odd, but the Niners signed Sam Darnold this year. They gave him almost $5 million. Carson Wentz is better. And Carson Wentz beats the Niners. So if the Niners sign him, that's a potential loss they don't have to worry about. What if he signs with Seattle, as he should? There's 2 potential losses right there. Or anywhere the Niners play. You sign him, put him on the bench, make sure no one else has him. You drafted a North Dakota State quarterback. Get Carson Wentz.
That's right. Get them both.
If he went to the Seahawks, that would be great for the NFC West. He should be there. He'd be better than Geno, I think.
To me, okay. I saw him make some terrible decisions, right? We've seen him make some horrendous decisions. Yes. But if you can surround him with weapons, he's still got a good arm. He showed yesterday he's athletic.
He's a career record. He's still over 500 for all the, fall from grace that he's experienced. He's still over 500 as a starter and about 95 starts. Jeez.
I like
he's 31. Could do worse. Anyway, Cleveland Ferrell, knee injury. Cleveland Ferrell injured his knee, left the game. You spoke to him in the locker room after. He said it was precautionary. What do we know about Cleveland Ferrell's knee? I think he's important to this team.
Okay, so I walked up to him. I'm like, Clee, how's the knee? He said, hey, man, if it had been the Super Bowl, I would have stayed in there, and I said,
okay, but if it was the NFC Championship, he would have came out.
Well, he also did say, because I said to him, what'd you think of Beal? And he's like, oh, man, the young fella's coming. And he's like, and we're going to need him for the next couple weeks. Like maybe I'm going to miss a couple games.
Yeah.
So precautionary. What I took away from that was Ferrell didn't tear the ACL, didn't tear anything, but it may be a very bad knee sprain. He may need 2 or 3 weeks to get right. The Niners don't play this week, but I'd be very surprised if he played in the divisional round. And I would say, if you said, based on your conversation, I'd say you might be able to get him for the NFC Championship game, but they're going to probably have to play without him in the first playoff game. That would be my guess.
Okay, that's a little troubling if they face the Rams, because the Rams can run the hell out of the ball. The Rams have Kyron Williams, the second leading rusher in the league, and the way the Rams run the ball is kind of like how the Niners run the ball, to the perimeter, outside zone, trying to get the edge. And frankly, I feel the Niners' best edge setter is Ferrell, considering he's committed to setting the edge, as opposed to the other defensive ends who are committed to rushing the quarterback and sort of stop the run as an afterthought or on the way to the quarterback. Nick Bosa just screams upfield, which is fine. I guess they pay him to do that. But Cleveland Ferrell is actually setting edges. And against Kyron Williams without Ferrell, the defense isn't great against the run, even with Ferrell. You take him off, kind of scary. So,
is it Alex Barrett time? Is it, could you play
can they get Samson Ebukam back?
Yeah. Well, here, I don't think it can get Samson Ebukam back, but it's interesting you said get somebody back because who's on the street? It's Jordan Willis.
He would help.
I think I would be
move Eric Armstead outside and play Sebastian Joseph Day inside or Javon Kinlaw, though it didn't look like Kinlaw had the greatest game on Sunday.
Yeah, but Sebastian Joseph Day is interesting because he does have some explosive capabilities for sure. But maybe Jordan Willis. Alex Barrett
used to play out there.
Armstead, but Armstead is so valuable to what you do inside. God, that would be. I don't know.
Yeah, he is. He's really good. I'm just trying not to get gouged on the outside by Kyron Williams if it comes to it. But hey, maybe Ferrell will play. Although it sounded like didn't Kyle say it sounded like he could miss a couple games? I think he said that. I believe he did.
I would say, if you ask me, I would say for sure he's going to miss a game. And the way he said when we had the conversation about young Robert Beal, he's like, young fella's coming on. And then he's like, and we're going to need him for the next couple of weeks. So the way he said that made me and by the way, I talked to Beal in the locker room too. Beal is a very interesting guy. We didn't really talk much about him this year. He was a 5th round draft choice out of Georgia. But since he came back, he's impressed Kasarik and the defensive coaching staff at practice. He looked good. To me, Robert Beal, might have a significant role here. He's got great speed. He's 6'4". He's a solid 250, 255. He's not an edge setter.
By Cleveland Ferrell, though.
No, he's not an edge setter. He's more of a go get the passer, but he should help.
Mm-hmm. Bobo says go for it on the 4th. I'm kind of hoping Moody forces Kyle to finally be aggressive on the 4th. On 4th down. Yeah.
Yeah. The Niners go for it on 4th down less than the analytics, the new era analytics say you should. They're a little more old school. Maybe this will kickstart them into the next round of, hey, you know what? The trend is going to be to go for it more often on 4th down. That may actually wind up being a good thing.
Matthew Sanders says in competitive football, Wentz eats turf last night. I don't understand.
He's saying that if it wasn't a throwaway game, the Niners had if it was a real game, that Wentz would have been any good.
I've seen Wentz play the Niners 4 times. He wins every time. I've seen him do this. He's not particularly good, but he runs and he throws the ball down the field. It's 2 things. You have to be mobile. You have to be aggressive with your legs and your arm against the Niners to have a chance. You can't dink and dunk your way to a freaking victory against the Niners. It doesn't work.
You got to be decisive. He's decisive too. Yeah. When they give you a run lane, you got to take it.
Hell yeah.
Man, yesterday, every time they gave him any room at all, he took off like he was a great runner.
You have to have that mindset against the Niners too, because they will give you scramble lanes all day. When I say they, I'm talking Nick Bosa all the time. So if you stand still, he'll sack you. But if you want to scramble, it's open. Is Debo going to return kicks in the playoffs? I hope so. Although now that Ray Ray's back, I'm not sure.
The one thing the Niners would have a huge advantage is that because they've got all these weapons, Ayuk's usage is way lower and Debo's usage is way lower than it would be if they were the singular weapon on a lesser team. So to me, I'm using Ayuk on some punt returns and I'm using Debo on some kick returns. If you want to mix in a few other guys, depending on game situation, that's fine. But those guys, I want to manufacture as many touches as I can in the playoffs for CMC, Debo, and Ayuk. And the fact that that two of those, or really all three of them, could be used on special teams, to me, is just a gift. And don't look the gift horse in the mouth.
Yep. Fish and Chip says, Larry, I think Dre Greenlaw would tackle a tree for the cause. He's a true soldier on the team. Do the team have look out for him in the playoffs for his sake?
Well, yesterday, the only moment of the game where I went, yes, was when they said, attention media, Dre Greenlaw and George Kittle have blah, 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 blah injuries and will not play today. Because Dre Greenlaw only knows one speed, and he would have played yesterday like it was Super Bowl Sunday. You got to protect him from himself in the meaningless games, but they're beyond the meaningless games. And now he gets 2 full weeks to rest. And all I would say is, watch out, whoever the Niners are playing in the division round. You give Greenlaw 2 weeks off, and he's going to absolutely have a monster game.
What is the Niners' biggest? Hold on, let me get this off the thing. What is the Niners' biggest concern heading into the playoffs? And why is it Jake Moody? Just kidding. You answer.
Well, it was Jake Moody, but I mean, it could be Jake Moody. But I'm going to say, even though I'm known as the biggest Brock Purdy supporter probably around, I'm going to say it's Brock Purdy interceptions. Brock Purdy had 9 interceptions in the 4 losses that he had this year. He's the opposite of check it down. He's always looking to attack. And to me, he just needs to be reminded. It's funny. Alex Smith needed to be reminded not to take the check down. Brock Purdy needs to be reminded to take the check down. And to me, it's like if you give me a patient Brock Purdy that doesn't turn it over with his playmaking ability and the rest of the surrounding cast, I think the Niners are going to go to the Super Bowl and have a great chance to win it. I really do. So, but my biggest concern is that he, is impatient, gets a little antsy, wants to make things happen, takes too many chances, and gets into a 3 or 4 turnover type game. That would be my biggest concern. Yeah.
We've seen him do that in a couple games, like the Baltimore game, the interception, the first one on the first drive in the end zone. And then it wasn't an interception, but against Jacksonville, coming out the bye week. First drive, again, he rolls left, throws back to Ayuk, and it's like, no. Yes, what an incredible catch by Ayuk, but had to acknowledge it was a really reckless decision. And then he did it again, and it cost him. So, yeah, like there are moments where he tries to do too much. And it's also like he's an anticipatory thrower, and there are certain defenses that might be able to anticipate where he's going to throw almost blindly because you have to throw before the wide receiver makes his break. Ravens did it. I don't know how many teams can do it. I don't know if any team in the NFC can do it. But yeah, it seems like certain teams have had real success against Brock, including the Niners defense, right? Like in training camp, Brock threw a bunch of picks. He was going against a great defense. Some other great defenses out there, and they've had success against Brock too.
It's funny. We've talked about Brock's turnovers in training camp in a general sense, but we've never really talked about Brock's training camp interceptions in a particular sense. But you and I were there every day, and now we can talk about it in a particular sense. What's the common denominator of all of this? Late, over the middle, tipped passes. Tip passes that are late over the middle. So I would just say to Brock, the one area that I've seen failings in your game is when you're late over the middle. Don't be late over the middle. Or also just be very circumspect about your releasing the ball. When it is late over the middle, man, you better have a real good accounting of the defenders, and you better not take chances. But even think about it, Grant. Close your eyes and think about those training camp interceptions. So many of them were tip balls and late over the middle with not a lot on it.
But it's also like it's the Niners defense, and the Niners don't have any weaknesses in their back seven. They can cover. They can cover zone. They can cover man-to-man. And what makes Brock so good for this offense is the combination of the 5 eligible receivers and Kyle Shanahan means that most of the time the opposing defense can't cover everyone. and someone's going to be open. And Brock can find him instantly. Like, not like Sam is like looking, I don't know where he's freaking looking. Brock can find the dude instantly, but when you finally go up against a defense like the Niners, Cleveland, Baltimore, that doesn't have any weaknesses at linebacker or safety at corner, and they can really match up, you can't just bank on someone being open every play. Like, Brock has to actually, it's hard. I mean, he has to play the position. And all of a sudden he's throwing anticipatory throws to people who aren't open, to windows that aren't open. And it's a bit of a catastrophe. It's a bit of a meltdown. We've seen some meltdowns from him, but there aren't that many teams that are built like that. But the ones that are in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, also I would say, look at the difference on his designed movement. When they design him to roll out, I think his success is way greater than when he gets flushed. Now, we just saw in the Commander game him get flushed, move around, and then buy time. But he did throw it to an open spot where there was no other defender that could have been peeking from the other side. Yeah. So that was the difference. But it seems like when he does get flushed and he moves around, and it sometimes can be a late over the middle type situation. And you just got to be really, really careful. I would just say to him and make plays, go out there and feel like you need to make a play, but you got a really good defense, and you got a punter that can pin the other team inside the 20 with pretty good regularity. So, especially early in games, you never have to worry about late in games. He's going to try to make a play, but early in games, if it's not there, throw it away, punt, play defense, go to the next play.
Keith Murphy, the Unbeaten, says our biggest concern is being down late. How about being up late? I mean, Kyle was up 10 against the Chiefs. He was up 25 against the Patriots. What about Kyle? To me, I'm not really concerned about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback. I know he's had some bad games, but like a lot of his defenders say, a lot of quarterbacks have had bad games. Yeah, there's a reckless streak in him, I guess, but Kyle has a very long history. We know exactly what his pattern is, and he showed it against the Ravens. In the most pressurized moments, the biggest games of the year, he makes uncharacteristic decisions. He loses the identity of his offensive system. He chokes, or has. I'm not saying he will this year, but to me, he's the concern. Have you grown? Because you could always point the finger at Jimmy Garoppolo and say it's his fault. It's his fault. You can't do that with Brock unless he throws 3 picks in a game. So I want to know what Kyle can do with a lead, with a deficit. What's he going to do in a big game?
Yeah, I mean, Kyle's a great coach, but this is the issue. And here are the numbers. The 49ers are 0-39 when trailing by 8 or more points in the fourth. The 49ers are 1-33 when trailing by more than 10 points in the second half. Ooh. And the 49ers are 4-35 when trailing by 3 points or more entering the fourth quarter. So
you don't expect that from an offensive genius. I know the odds are stacked against you, but you would think someone as gifted as him would find an edge, just a small one in those situations, but he hasn't.
It's a weird situation. Okay, against Kansas City, they ran the ball, and were maybe a little too conservative against a really explosive offense that, eventually ran them over down the stretch. And then in other games, they haven't run the ball.
Or you could argue the Niners abandoned the run in that Super Bowl. I mean, they had Mostert and Debo clicking and put the game in Jimmy's hands. Like, hey, buddy, you close it out for us. Like,
what? Here would be my biggest complaint with Kyle is, it was something I voiced to him at the in the aftermath of the Super Bowl. When the Niners played the Rams in the NFC title game, and it got down to the fourth quarter, it was Stafford to Cup. Stafford to Cup, Stafford to Cup. The Niners have 3 really, really special players. It's Ayuk, it's Debo, and it's CMC. Those guys have to touch the ball a lot in the biggest games.
I'll even say Kittle.
Playoffs.
You could go to Kittle too. He's pretty good.
Kittle's good, but as far as you got 3 real dynamic playmakers, and you got to get the ball to your dynamic playmakers.
Yeah. It ain't use check. Sorry.
I love JJ too. JJ's, really dependable, a third down guy. But I'm just saying, like, you got to get the ball. I mean, Debo had 2 touches in the second half against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
How many touches did he have in the fourth quarter against the Rams in the NFC Championship? Like, Kyle, you can't make these mistakes.
They got to
get out of the way.
Well,
Kyle, here's what Kyle does.
And it can be manipulated.
When he gets scared, not scared, when he gets in these pressured moments, he's like, okay, they expect me to go to my best player. So I'm going to not do that. Like, no, who doesn't matter? Go to your best player. Do whatever they expect you're going to. You have to go down swinging with your best player.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, look at yesterday. They needed a big play in the fourth quarter. Now, granted, yesterday was a different kind of a game, right? So you had no Debo and you had no Ayuk and you had no McCaffrey. But in the, what happened? Chris Conley dropped a key pass. Ray McLeod dropped a key pass. I mean, if that had been a playoff game, that's a disaster. You have Ayuk, you have Debo, and you can manufacture touches to Debo. And to me, I gotta see Debo touch the ball a lot, especially in the biggest games. I mean, in the biggest games, I feel like Debo has a way to elevate that even other guys don't. I would list him as the number one weapon in the biggest games. And I got to manufacture some touches to Debo, with the money on the table.
Yeah. Fish and Chip says Kyle needing help play calling biggest concern. Well, I'm with you on that. I don't know about play calling. Matthew Sanders says pin teams deep and get safeties and is better than relying on Moody's leg. Wow. We're just Niner fans don't want to kick field goals anymore. Okay.
Which is scary, I mean, that's not necessarily a great spot to be in where you don't trust your field goal guy, but whatever test they can manufacture for Moody in practice, they need to do it.
Fish and Chip says run abandonment, a Kyle trait that's perplexing. Yeah. Considering it's a run first system. Okay. Let's talk about the Niners' young defensive backs. Taylor Hawkins, he stepped up.
Nice
Samuel Womack hasn't quite stepped up, but all of a sudden the Niners need these young guys to be factors in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, this is a major one because they went to Jason Verrett, and now Verrett's out for the year with the rotator cuff. They do have Logan Ryan, who's a veteran who might be able to help out a little bit here and there, but I think they have to come to grips with the fact that the Niners have 5 young DBs, Jair Brown at safety, and then Womack, Luter, Lenore, and Ambry. Those 5 guys, they're going to sink or swim with those 5 guys. And you got to get those guys ready to play. I don't care, what you got to do, but you got to coach them up. You got to get them ready. You got to talk them up. You got to whatever. I'm not, if it's Gibson, if it's a Fonga, they got to do everything in their power to get these guys ready to roll. Womack and Luter, you're not going to find guys off the street that are going to be better athletes and better coverage guys. They're going to have to lean on some of these young guys, and those young guys are going to have to come through. If they're going to win it all, those 5 young DBs have to play ball right now. And Womack was close on a few, but was right there, but the completion gets made. He's got to get his hands on the ball. And Luter, I mean, they just got to, these 5 young DBs have to play ball or they're not going to win.
Luter, Womack. My thing with Womack, I've been watching Womack for a couple years. He's always in great coverage. He gives no separation. He's right there. And then the guy makes the catch. All the time.
Yeah.
So that's troubling to me. I mean, he's done half the battle, but if that's who he is, you can't really play him. He's not particularly big. He's not going to help you out against the run. So I don't know. They do have a little bit of a problem here. Do you think Jair Brown's coming back for the playoffs?
Yeah, I do. I think Jair Brown will be back. He will have had 4 weeks, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I think, it's a 2-3 week injury. I think he'll be back for the divisional round. And he's got to play with poise. I mean, I like, by the way, when I say these 5 DBs, young DBs got to play, I like them. I like Womack more than a lot of people do. I believe in Luter and Womack and Jair and obviously Lenore and Ambry. These guys all have the talent. They all have the speed. They all have the smarts. They all have the tutelage. I mean, these guys can do the job. They just have to do the job.
Okay. Bonus topic. Harold McAllister says thoughts on the Chargers requesting interview for Steve Wilks, another comp pick. The Chargers have requested to interview Steve Wilks. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I like Steve Wilks too. I mean, did you see Steve Wilks just get absolutely irate on the sideline?
Yeah, it was cool.
I mean, I love seeing that. But, Steve Wilks has coached for like 20 years, and he's coached in like 17 different spots in 20 years. So he has moved, and I think the expectation is always that he's going to move. I think he's done a pretty good job this year. Definitely coming down to the sideline and kind of adapting to think about what the job Steve Wilks did. A lot of guys wouldn't have even taken this job because they can't run their own scheme. He came here and said, "What's your scheme? I'll adapt." And then when they said, "Well, he said, I'm more comfortable in the booth." And they said, "Well, we're more comfortable having you on the sideline." He adapted again, and he's making it all work. I like the way he deals with the media. He's straightforward. He's intense. So I think there's a very good chance that Steve Wilks gets hired away. And this third round draft choice thing, I think, is really a bad policy. But whatever. The Niners, they'll gladly take any pick they can get, but I don't like it as a policy. But overall, I think there's a very good chance that Steve Wilks will get a job, somewhere else this offseason. But if not, welcome back. But I think, he's got a lot of pelts on the wall. The one thing about Steve Wilks, he's a good leader. And, you saw him at Carolina at the end of the year last year. That room stayed together. That team played hard. And I never get the feeling that the Niners are jaking it on defense. They always seem like they're bringing energy and effort. And I think he's a big part of that.
I'm surprised. You got to interview a lot of candidates. I hope this isn't a Rooney Rule thing because Steve Wilks is really qualified. He's very good. I'm just surprised for the Chargers. Like, they just fired a defensive coach. Usually teams go defense to offense to defense to offense. Not always, but usually it's like, well, you have Justin Herbert. Why don't you get him coach? So I always assume they would go get Jim Harbaugh. It seemed like if Jim Harbaugh is going to leave, he hired Don Yee. He's probably in the market. Why would he not want to coach a team with a top 5 quarterback or borderline top 5? Larry doesn't think so. Well,
it is interesting. Well, go ahead.
Hold on. I said maybe the Chargers can't afford Jim Harbaugh. I would imagine that Steve Wilks would be a lot cheaper than Jim Harbaugh, or maybe a defensive coach is a lot cheaper than an offensive coach. And the Chargers have been known to be a little cheap. They don't even have their own stadium.
It is interesting, though. It's like there's different philosophies. It's like I hear what you're saying about going from a defensive coach to an offensive coach, and a lot of times teams don't know what they want.
Right.
The trend in recent years is to get the play caller, the offensive coach.
Right.
Seems like they're in vogue. But if I also think it's kind of about so Belichick had Tom Brady, and then he was the advantage on defense, and Brady was the advantage on offense. When I think of the greatest defensive teams ever, I think of like the 2000 Ravens. Brian Billick was an offensive coach, and they had awesome defensive talent. The 2002 Buccaneers had John Gruden, who was an offensive coach, but then they had awesome defensive talent. So maybe the Chargers they've drafted a lot on offense. Rashawn Slater, Mike Williams, the wide receiver from TCU. They've used a lot of their picks on offense, obviously Herbert. Maybe they want a defensive coach because they feel like they need a defensive coach with all that offensive skill position talent to balance it out. I don't know, but I think Wilks is I hope it's not to satisfy some, quota as far as how many guys you got to interview and that kind of thing. I hope if Wilks is being interviewed, he's being interviewed because of sincere interest.
Yeah, I would hope so too. I think he probably is. He's one of the better coordinators in the league right now. He did a phenomenal job with the Niners. He's been a head coach before. Look at what I think his stock went up when the Panthers tanked this year. He did well with Carolina last year. What was he, 6-6? Who the hell else has done anything like that with Carolina recently? So there's a lot of reasons to absolutely interview him. I'm just surprised. Like you said, Sometimes it's best to pair a good quarterback with a defensive coach, but you just tried that. You just tried that. Maybe that's all they can afford. I just don't think Steve Wilks could command that much money right now. Harbaugh can. Harbaugh, how much do you think it costs to hire Jim Harbaugh a year?
Can I tell you after tonight's game? Because it's going to go up if he wins tonight's game.
Tonight.
I think it's going to take a lot. It's not only that, Grant. After the Niner experience, Jim Harbaugh wants control. The one thing he left the Niners for. I mean, they didn't want him anymore. They essentially fired him. But Jim Harbaugh wanted total control. He didn't want Trent Baalke. He wanted Mike Lombardi, and he got Trent Baalke, and that thing fractured early on. And he went to Michigan where he could control everything. He's a control freak. And I think that if, win or lose tonight, if he goes back to the NFL, he's going to have control.
I think so. Get these last supers and go watch the game. Doug Bryan's stats, very similar in 94, released in 95. That's the thing I forgot about Doug Bryan. He wasn't with the Niners long. He went to the Saints.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing too. The Niners act like, you know what? We're all about Jake Moody. Jake Moody's our guy long term. All right. Well, is he? And
you might draft a kicker next year. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the other point on this thing. Stop drafting kickers. Come on. Use your picks on players. Find kickers.
Papa Phil says Womack had 3 interceptions in a preseason game too. He did have at least 2. I remember that from the slot. John Mathis says during the playoffs, can we please get a punter scramble again? Bet it pays off big time. Thank you. Not utilizing the offensive weapon that is Mitch Wishnowsky. It's overdue.
He's got great
Keith Murphy and Beaton says Wilks is a Rooney Rule interview, in my opinion. I hope not. He's better than that. Also, the whole idea of knocking that off to check a box is so despicable. But
yeah.
Anyway, rooting for Steve Wilks. It'd probably be in the Niners' interest for them to keep him. I don't think Salah's getting fired anytime soon, and I don't know who they would have to replace Steve Wilks. So I don't think he's getting hired. We'll see. It's always tough to hire a coordinator who's going to the Super Bowl too. Got to wait. You
do have to wait, and these guys are impatient. They want to hire people like today, and their fan bases want them to hire them soon too. It almost like the guys who get hired after the Super Bowl have to be like, you're so wed to that guy, it's unbelievable. But maybe the one thing about Steve is he's well known throughout the league. He's well respected throughout the league, and maybe there's somebody that is dreaming the Steve Wilks dream of having him be their leader. I mean, I'll say this, he's a strong presence in front of a group of people.
No question about it. All right, it's time to go watch this national championship game. Who you got winning?
I got Washington. I like Washington on the money line. I like them to win. Michael Penix. I've been touting Michael Penix. Penix to me is the best quarterback in college football. He's better than Bo Nix. He's better than Drake May. He's better than Caleb. He's better. He's the best. And we talk a lot about Harbaugh, but the coach for the Huskies, Caleb DeBoer, I think is a great young coach. And I think he's going to be in the NFL before long.
Go check it out. I'll be watching. See you guys tomorrow. Cone Zone, me, my pops. Don't miss it.